Happy February to all of you! My name is Rebecca David, and this is the space between the picket lines. Now, in the last video, we did an insider's eye view on the March for Life 2022. Today, we are diving into trafficking and its correlation to the abortion industry. Now, warning in advance, it will be a topic that breaks your heart and it is painful, but it is so necessary to discuss and to be aware of. Now, on a super exciting side note, this week's topic has got a lot of data that goes into it. So I have decided to divide the information into two different videos. So my first two-parter of 2022, woohoo! So thank you in advance for being willing to go down this road with me. And I will see you very shortly. Here on the Genesis of Conception, I believe that we owe it to the victims and the survivors of the trafficking world to shed some light on the horrors therein. Now, trafficking is an inhumane crime, and it puts an actual price tag on a human life. Today, I'm going to break down the trafficking world into two segments: sex trafficking statistics and stories from survivors. Now, they are both intensely intertwined with the world of abortion, and I'll do the best I can to show that to you. And word in advance, because of how interconnected they are, I'm not necessarily able to separate it into two distinct columns. So you'll notice that I'm going to supply information on both simultaneously, even in their own individual segments. It'll make more sense as the video continues. And for simplicity's sake, today we're going to focus on the United States as a whole. Now, while we go through all of this, I ask that you keep one pivotal concept at the forefront of your mind. What I'm describing to you in this video happens every day, everywhere, and in every state in the United States. So to start with, we get into some statistics. And before I describe the stats, I'm going to tell you what sex trafficking actually is. According to the CDC.gov, via the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, sex trafficking is defined as follows: the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act. We also know, thanks to the highcourt.co, that this same act specifies that the victim does not need to be physically transported from one location to another for the crime to fall within this definition. Now, the reason why this is important is because a lot of people are trafficked in their own neighborhoods, sometimes in their own homes, so you don't have to go anywhere for it to happen. Now, with the understanding of that, we're going to move on to the statistics regarding its prevalence and its price tag. According to the FamilyResearchCouncil.org, sex trafficking rakes in about 99 billion with a B per year. In fact, a study by the Urban Institute that interviewed pimps and traffickers found that they can make anywhere from $5,000 to $32,833 a week off their victims. And as if that were not horrific enough, the very same interview found that these criminals describe sex trafficking as low risk, high reward, due to a mixture of lack of public awareness and lack of intervention. Now, these pimps and traffickers explained that places like Planned Parenthood are huge on both aiding and abetting because of the financial benefits involved. So they turn a blind eye as long as they're getting paid, essentially. Then we get to the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin with, quote, "It is the fastest growing business of organized crime and the third largest criminal enterprise in the entire world, including the US. The lifestyle of a traffic victim revolves around violence, forced drug use, and constant threats. It's to keep them intimidated, so you keep them in their place. These victims are sold to traffickers. They're locked up in the rooms or brothels of wherever for weeks or months. They're drugged, they're terrorized, they are raped repeatedly." And speaking specifically of statistics, we find compliments of the highcourt.co, the refugedmst.org, enoughisenough.org, and ellacruz.org. 10 truly horrific numbers. In 2019, there were 8,375 open victim cases reported. 5,090 of these were new. Online forms of sex trafficking increased by more than 45% during the COVID pandemic. There was an 846% increase in reported child sex trafficking cases from 2010 to 2015. In 2020, of the nearly 26,500 missing children reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 1 in 6 were likely victims of child sex trafficking. 27% of sex trafficking cases reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline number were instances of familial tracking. In a 2018 survey of child sex trafficking victims, 55% of respondents reported being in school while they were being trafficked. There's not a single state in the USA that does not suffer from sex trafficking, with the worst state being Nevada and the best one being New Hampshire. Of the survivors of sex trafficking who entered the life in the past decade, 75% reported being advertised online. Over 21% of those trafficked for sex are children. And finally, 71% of all victims are female. I'm talking both girls, so under 18, and women, over 18. That's the concise and atrocious reality of sex trafficking. It's ever present and it destroys lives and families forever. And when those women and those girls get pregnant, many times they are forced to abort their children, which leads us to part 2, stories. Thanks to FamilyResearchCouncil.org, we know that it is not unusual for women to be traffickers and oversee the abortions of the females who are assigned to them. This is known in that world as a harem. There was actually a 2014 documentary done on the topic, you can find links down below, featuring sex trafficking survivors. It's titled Sex Trafficking and the Abortion Connection. Now, as one survivor very bravely described, quote, "Over the years, I had pimps and customers who hit me and punched me and kicked me and beat me and slashed me with a razor. I had forced, unprotected sex from which I got pregnant 3 times, and I had 2 abortions at a clinic. Afterwards, I was back out on the streets again." Because that's their reality. Now, another survivor who endured 6 abortions said that she was under serious pressure from her pimps to abort the babies. Finally, nearly 30% of trafficking survivors said that they went to Planned Parenthood. One survivor described her situation, quote, "I got pregnant 6 times and had 6 abortions during this time. Several of them were from a doctor who was a client. He did them backdoor. And at least one of my abortions was from Planned Parenthood because they didn't ask any questions. You just went backdoor, where the charge was about $150. That was the price put on not 1, but 2 human lives. Now, those are just a few of the countless stories that survivors have been brave enough to tell, and I've compiled a whole list of links to more stories in the info box down below, and I highly encourage you to go and check them out. It'll break your heart, but it's so important to have your eyes opened to what is happening. Now, that said, it is time to distill all of this intense and difficult information into 2 key sentences. Regular everyday people are sex trafficked all over the United States, with women and underage girls making up 71% of the total. Women just like me, and if you're watching this in female, you. Now, from there, when those females get pregnant, they are usually forced into abortion at Planned Parenthood facilities and others like them, so that they can continue to be sold without profits being messed up. And the abortion industry profits off of it so much per year. Now, this is where I encourage you to take a moment and to pause this video and to let these truths set in. And unpause when you're ready for this week's book recommendation. So this week's book recommendation is titled Girls Like Us, Fighting for a World Where Girls Are Not for Sale. It is a memoir written by Rachel Lloyd, who is a survivor of the horror that is the sex trafficking world. It is painful and powerful and pertinent. And of course, you can find it in all of the usual spots, such as Goodreads, Amazon, and thriftabooks.com, but not limited to those places. Now, additionally, if you happen to be watching this and you need to know the hotline for human trafficking of any variety, sexual or other, you can call 1-800-373-7888. You can also text 233-733. And if you want a live chat, just look up humantraffickinghotline.org. There is help out there for you, I promise. And now, for my favorite part of this video. If you are facing a crisis, an unplanned, or even an unwanted pregnancy, or if you know someone who is, or if you have questions and you want to talk to me, please reach out. Whoever you are, I can get you connected to the proper resources and answer any questions or queries that you may have. My contact info across the various social media platforms should be somewhere on this screen right now, so reach out to me in whatever way is easiest for you, and I will help you. Now, as for what's going on next week, I will have part 2 coming your way, which has a specific focus on what happens to aborted babies. It's going to turn your stomach, but it is so incredibly important. For right now, however, have a blessed and fantastic rest of your week, and I want you to remember how precious and how loved and how special you are to our Creator. And I challenge you to live like it is true, because it will revolutionize your entire world. Take it from someone who's been there, done that. And of course, above all else, well, like mid-range with everything else, let's continue to be pioneers in the space between the picket lines together. God bless.